Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about feeling limited by IPRPGs. Sorry,
limited by IPRPG.
I was reading it upside down. Sorry.
So I'm going to go to the Wayback Machine.
Oh no, he's going to the Wayback Machine.
Mid 1980.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly what year. Could have been as early as 83. Could have been as late as 87. Doesn't matter. But what happened was the group that I was playing with had decided that we wanted to, instead of everybody having their own world, I believe one of our players was running in Middle Earth. Felipe had his own world called Cardoza, and there's a mishmash of other worlds. I think a couple of the gamers were running in the world of Stephen Donaldson's The Wounded Land, in that world.
I don't even know what that means.
It's a book
written
by Stephen Donaldson, and the first book is called The Wounded Land.
Okay.
Very interesting world. Anyway, so we were all talking about, and there was a lot of, we were playing a D&D at the time, and there wasn't a lot of established campaign settings. A big one was Greyhawk, because Greyhawk was the original world that Gary Gygax and I believe Robert, I forgot his name, but the other guy who ran games and is credited in the original D&D ran games in that world. So Greyhawk was really popular, and we decided to do it. And just like most people do, well, I thought what most people do is we all take a section of the world, and that's where we're going to run our games. And that way our characters can go from one place to another without having to be transported by plane or going through a portal, not an airplane, but through the plains, so to speak. And I remember I took this area called Perrinland, which is near Lake Quag, which is kind of popular because actually a big writer wrote about it and mentions that lake in this book. I forget what author it was and what book. But anyway, I don't remember.
You can put it in the notes, dude.
I was going to say the name, but I don't want to get it wrong. So what happens is that they had a little gazetteer, like a little pamphlet. Well, it's a little booklet that had different areas and what they were.
I'm sorry, gazetteer?
Yes, that's what they call it.
Okay, what is that?
A gazetteer is like a
map?
Well, no, they had a map for the world, but it tells you about the area.
Like a tourist guide?
Yes, like a tourist guide.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
I have gone a long time in this life, and I do not believe I've ever heard that word.
Gazetteer?
Yeah.
Oh, well. It's like a gazette.
And I am well read.
Well, you can't be that well read if you've never heard that term. At least in fantasy novels. But anyway, so it came with the maps, right? The big deal was the big maps, and then it had full color, and then it had this gazetteer that tells you, like the different kingdoms, I guess is what they were, and it would tell you like the big city, and then they would say the population is 70% human, 30% elf, or all these other combinations and stuff.
The statistics.
Yeah, and then some of them would give you more information about the area. Right, Perrinland unfortunately didn't have a lot of information, and so when I read the little information there was, I looked at the area, I had to make up stuff. Right, I made up a town other than the capital, and then what I also did is I mapped out that town. I put different locations for characters to visit. So I made a underground dwarven fortress, abandoned, of course. And I wrote this before I had even ever read Lord of the Rings. So you can't fault me for that idea, stealing. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sorry. Why are you telling us this again?
Anyway, so I'm using this IP.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And because there's obviously some history behind this area.
Okay.
This world. But there wasn't a lot of information. So what I'm saying is that dealing with that, there was a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do because there wasn't a lot of information for this world and for specifically the area that I had claimed for myself. So that happened. Many years later, in 2001, I decided to start a whole new campaign using 3.0 rules.
2001 Space Odyssey?
No, D&D.
I'm sorry.
What's it? The 3.0 D&D had come out in 2000. I had looked at the player's handbook and thought I was utterly, I want to say in love, but enthralled by the changes they had made to the D&D system.
That's not an uncommon thing amongst gamers.
And it was pretty cool. I mean, I really liked the book. So in 2001, I sent out an email to all my friends, hey, I want to start a new campaign. And along with that, the idea of getting together and playing again in a large group, I also said, well, we should share the world where all of us play, all of us GM, and we all get to keep our characters in the same world and don't have to go through portals to go to each other's world. And at the time then, there was Dragonlance, there was Faerun or Forgotten Realms, and there was a couple other, third-party publishers, because that version of D&D had the OGL.
Did anybody answer your email?
No.
Is that why I have all these Forgotten Realms books around?
Well, because I was running 3.0, and I was running in Faerun, because I decided, well, I'm just going to run in Faerun. It looks pretty interesting. And the thing is, I still have the 3.0, maybe 3.5. I don't know when it came out, but the Forgotten Realms campaign setting.
You do.
And it's chock full of information.
Because I used that information for when I ran in Forgotten.
Yes.
And
the print is tiny.
Very tiny.
So there's a lot of information.
But it's pretty cool. You can't really use the stats because they've changed a little bit.
Well, unless you're running 3.0. Yeah.
Unless you're running 3.0. But the history is there.
Right. And it had a lot of stuff in it. And I'm like, oh, man, when I bought that book and I go, holy crap, there's a lot of information. I don't know how much these people know about Faerun. Luckily for me, they practically knew nothing. So when I set my game in Cormyr, they were it was fine.
They would have been happy wherever you put it.
That's true. So that happened. So that was another IP where I said, I'm going to run in this world that has all kinds of information already in it. And if somebody who had read a lot of Forgotten Realms books said, well, that's not true. That's not where it's supposed to be. Oh, Elmerster doesn't live there. And all these other things, I would have said, what do I do? But that, luckily for me, nobody called out on me on it, and everything was fine. And by the way, nobody else ever ran a game in Faerun but me.
I thought Felipe and Sip did.
Much later.
Okay.
After the second campaign dissolved.
I see.
So I got them from 1st to 10th level, maybe 11th level. Then we restarted from 1st to 10th. And then by that time, my son was old enough to play. So we started Pathfinder with him. And I did the same thing.
Several times.
I think.
And then D&D 5th edition.
Then D&D 5th edition. And I think they all got about 10th level.
Yeah, that's about where you stop running.
Yes. I can't handle.
So we're talking about IPs?
Yes. So what I'm saying is when you run across this situation where you have an IP and you want to run a game in it, it can be daunting, right? If there's other people who might be more knowledgeable of you.
I can just tell you that just as a player, I was in a Doctor Who game.
Oh yes.
And I thought I mean I love Doctor Who. I watched all of it with the new ones. Yeah. I haven't watched many of the old ones because I was
David Tennant and all those guys.
Yeah, David Tennant and Eccleston.
Yes.
And all of them.
Right.
But me and Augustine watched all of those. And when I went into the game, I was like in awe because these people knew way more stuff than I did.
Right.
And I was like, whoa.
And the GM knew a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Yes. Which is pretty cool, right? That's really neat. But let's say someone goes, I've seen Doctor Who show once or twice.
I could run it.
I think I like the system. I like the world. I'm going to run the game.
I don't know. That system was a little funky, but yeah.
I actually have the game, but I've never ran it. They came out with a second edition. Anyway, so that's, I think, the situation that people fear is you run a genre game, and then people show up, and they are much more knowledgeable than you are.
We also played in a Star Trek game. It was you and me and Jonah. We with a guy called I don't remember his name. It was at Kubla Khan, and
his name. Well, we don't know.
I think we played 2 years in a row.
Yes.
With him, and
he was a
Star Trek aficionado.
Yes,
I would say that I've probably watched every Star Trek episode ever made, all of them at least 2 or 3 times.
Yes,
but I obviously don't retain the catalog of information that other people do, because I don't know what the episodes are, the names or anything like that, the scenes, and
he did,
and it was so fun to play in because almost everybody in the room knew everything about Star Trek.
Right.
Maybe not everything, but
they knew quite a bit.
And then
they were Star Trek fans.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was very, very cool, and we had a lot of fun. And you and me and Jonah had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we had a blast.
Because it was.
Except I was Guinan and I couldn't quite play her. In my mind, as weird as or strange as she comes across, mainly because I hadn't really watched that much Star Trek. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to play Guinan. It was the only character left because I think I was late to the party.
I think I think what you said was, I'll play whatever's left over, because you were not as comfortable playing some of the main characters.
Right. Oh, that's true too. But anyway, we did, and we had fun, so that was cool.
It was a lot of fun. Yes. So those are 2 examples of GMs that are like totally know the genre, right?
Correct. And the problem is, I think that's the fear, right? That when you go to run a game, people are just going to like, well, you don't know Star Trek. And I faced some of this criticism when we were playtesting Star Trek Adventures. I've mentioned it before. We were playing, and it was the playtest rules, and I was using the playtest adventure. And it was a very basic adventure. You had to cross a land bridge, a bridge made out of a fallen tree or something. And there was all these things that could happen. And then they're able to get on steal, borrow, liberate, however he wants, a space shuttle.
A shuttle, yes.
A shuttle, I'm sorry. A Star Trek shuttle. And then
Augustine and Chris.
No, I fired upon you guys.
Yes.
And then I hit you, and it called you guys to crash, which was in the rule book. And they're like, well, doesn't this thing have shields? And I go, this shuttle doesn't have shields. And then I heard it from everybody, especially my son.
And Chris.
And you. Well,
of course it has shields.
Of course it has shields. Everything has shields. A space shuttle has to have shields. The shuttles have shields and weapons. And I'm like, I'm looking at the playtest material, and they don't mention shields at all. I'm like, this one doesn't have any.
Even the Enterprise things had shields.
Well, of course, it's a big ship, but anyway,
I'm talking about the time.
But anyway, I felt that
it was a play test, though. It was a play test,
I felt the disdain of the players. You don't know Star Trek, then. Like,
it was unfortunate for you that it was me and Augustine and Chris, because Augustine had been watching Star Trek since he's like born. Yeah. So he hears it in the background and knows everything. And Chris is a cataloger, right? He knows everything.
Yes, and he's an older dude, so he watched the original series when it came out and all that crap. So it was very hard for me to deal with, because I'm like, well, what excuse can I give? Why doesn't this shuttle have shields?
It's written right here. It doesn't say anything about shields.
And I tried it. It didn't work. And then they go, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, maybe it's just not working. Hello. Maybe the shield generator is offline.
There you go.
And the flux capacitor is
flux capacitor.
So I understand that feeling, right?
But you learned from it, right?
No.
For Star Trek, because when you run your...
sorry. I didn't mean to offend all the Star Trek fans out there.
Watch it.
Star Trek weirdos.
Hey, you live with us. What are you talking about? But you did learn from that experience, because now
Not to ever run Star Trek.
No, now I know when you run your Star Trek game, you say straight up, I do not know Star Trek as well as most of you, probably. This is my world. This is where you in the Star Trek universe. So if I get anything wrong, please, how do you say it?
Well, you're jumping ahead for me, but you're right. Sorry. That's the first thing I do is when I run any game that has any IP, I will explicitly tell my players, I am not an expert in blank. whether it was Blade Runner, Alien, Star Trek Adventures,
Star Wars,
whatever.
Lord,
I've
the One Ring.
The One Ring. I've read Lord of the Rings. I've never read the Silmarillion. I do not speak Sindarin or whatever freaking Elvish language is out there, or even know one word of it. So I can run the One Ring in the spirit of what I feel is Middle Earth, and the One Ring for me is a game that's closest to that feeling. That whole journaling, going on journeys, the fight between good and evil, doing the right thing, and all that other stuff. So I think I hit those notes pretty well. The same thing with Star Trek. When I ran Star Trek Adventures, even though the playtest that I was grilled over, I was able to work beyond that, even though I still have some
nightmares.
Well, I want to say nightmares, but some feelings toward that situation. But what I tell people is, and I ran Star Trek Adventures many times, even though I wouldn't. I consider myself a Star Trek fan, but not like an aficionado, and not like this catalog, like a catalog of memory that I know the episode's names or number. Right? I remember the episode. I go, oh yeah, I remember that one where this happens.
Yeah.
The green lady has suckers and sucks their salt out of people. I don't know the name of that one. I still don't know. I just saw it just maybe 2 weeks ago, and I still don't remember the name of the episode.
But
I know that
yes,
what happens.
Yes.
Among other things, right? And so when I run a game, I explicitly say, I am not an expert. And then I tell them, I'm going to try to be as close, as faithful to the world, the genre that I can be, but I might make mistakes. And so in that case, if I make a thematic mistake, like what should happen or what the rules are in Star Trek, like what's part of the Prime Directive, and my interpretation is a little funky, just think of it as in my parallel universe.
Yes.
It's just a little
my
bit different.
timeline.
I'd rather use parallel because I don't want to get into funky timelines. So, and I think that really relieves you as a GM, and it relieves the players from the expectation of I'm going to run this fantastic, true, faithful as I can to, perfect as faithful to Star Trek as I can, as can be done. But what I do is I try to run a really fun game and as true to what I believe Star Trek is about. And I've had that guy who ran that Star Trek game in my game,
Yes.
and he had a blast.
Yeah.
I go, well, how did I do? Because even afterwards, he goes, you did great. That was a great game. I go, yeah. Do you have any ideas of what I did wrong? He goes, no, you did everything good.
I think that that's the one thing that you'll find about, I don't know about other IPs, but Star Trek IPs, the canon.
I think everybody's just happy to play.
If you tell the people that, I might get it a little bit wrong.
Right.
If it's not exactly the way you remember it, then think of it as a parallel universe. That helps to relieve the players from going, oh, he has it wrong, I need to explain it to him.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and call me out on it at the table.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, okay, he already told me I'm not an expert. He's not an expert, so okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let it slide. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something real trivial.
Unless it was shields, they might not let that slide.
Well, that was in a playtest version, damn it.
I know. And they did change the rules after that playtest.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that a lot of people who ran that may not have been ultimate Star Trek fans, right? And so they ran into people at the table going, what do you mean there's no shields?
I'm not sure. So, but maybe it did happen. I'm
That's
sure it did.
why you do playtest,
Yes,
right?
yes. So another thing you can do is pick a place or an area of the world, the genre that you're running, and make it your own. In Star Trek, Star Wars, it's a huge world, right? Universe, so to speak. So you could just pick a little area and say, this is this area, and I'm just going to be the expert in this area, make up my own stuff, what planets there are there, or even if you use planets that are already in the system, maybe they mention it or something, or in the movie or in
a book,
in the series or in a book, you can tweak that stuff to fit your world, your universe view, in this case, Star Trek. And I think people have no problem doing that. I like the area called the Shackleton Expanse because it's something that's not really written about, and it's just like a way out there, kind of like in the frontier, which is where I base almost all my games of Star Trek Adventures when I run at a con. Like I was gonna say, but I did say is that people who are looking to play in an IP game, RPG game, they're just happy to be playing in that world. I remember when shortly after Firefly came out, there was a Serenity rule book, and let me tell you, when people signed up for that game, there was like, for a 6 or even 8 person slot game, there was 50, 60 people signed up to that year after year in game after game, because it would tell you how many people had signed up for it and how many actually, it was like a lottery system, got into it. And I think that speaks to what people want at the time. And even though Star Trek is probably pretty popular, I ran games where most of the time I got people, I had to say, oh, my slots are full, I can't add you. I added a couple people here and there. Also, somebody didn't show up, so I've always run with a full table, and that's just because I'm lucky. But the more popular the genre is, the more people are going to be happy to play in it. And, there's going to be some jerks out there that just want to nitpick and be kind of negative. I think you got to just look beyond them and just say, well, I'm going to make other people happy and just run the game as best as I can. I acknowledge you're not an expert. And then you could always say, in my version of this game, if I get something wrong, it's just my universe that's different. And I think that, like I said, as long as those kinds of words are said before the game even starts, before you start describing the rules, I think it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders. And even on the players themselves, like, I don't have to be uptight about the world or about the rules or the regulations of Star Trek or how Klingons really are. Are they the lizards or the old style Klingons?
Oh, jeez. Please stop. Well, I think another IP that really was kind of exciting to me to play was Alien, when we played Alien.
Oh, yeah.
Or was it
Really?
Aliens?
Yeah.
Aliens?
Alien.
It was because we used to run the Aliens game, the large game, right?
Yes.
And we've watched all the movies. Well, maybe not all of them, but
I've seen all the movies, but some are terrible.
anyway, I thought that was a really cool IP, and even if you don't know everything about Alien or Aliens, when you go to play in it, there's you probably have seen the movie, right? And
yeah.
so even if you're not an expert, you're going to have fun because
Right.
it's pretty cool just to be in that situation where you know what's going on.
I think I told you when I ran Alien at KublaCon one year, there were some people who had never even played anything else but D&D. In fact, 2 guys were like, I didn't even know there was other RPGs. I'm like, holy crap, you're at a convention. Mind's going to be blown. And they were like, their minds were blown, right? They're like, wow, like every once in a while they would stop and go, this is really cool. I'm like, okay, good.
Had they watched the movie?
They had seen the original Alien and Alien.
Okay, all right.
And whether they had seen the other ones, the terrible ones, I don't know. But I'm sure they had. And this is about 6 or 7 years ago. Well, I don't know when Alien came out.
It's
RPG.
been a while.
Yeah, at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic.
Yes,
Was it?
I think. I don't know.
Might have been right after. Anyway, so it doesn't matter. But there's some people out there who have heard a little bit about it, are intrigued about it, and will play in your game just because of the IP. And then there's people who love the world or love the universe and are happy to play in a game that has that moniker on it.
And with an IP like Alien, it's just you go to play and you're like, are we going to live through this? It's just the idea that you've seen these movies and it's pretty cool, right?
Yes. And then another one I ran was Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Well, and I was in the playtest for that for your game, and I know I'm not. Just in case you're listening, everybody knows I do not know everything about Blade Runner. I've fallen asleep through the movie several times, but it was very fun.
Jolene. You're not making friends.
But it was very fun, and I know some of you are very. This is one of your favorite genres, right?
Favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. David, our friend.
Yes.
And it was funny because I ran the Blade Runner, and he ran it at the same time. Not the same time, but that same convention. And I didn't even know he was there until he goes, "Oh, I'm running Blade Runner." I go, "Oh, you're running Blade Runner?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What are you running?" He goes, "I'm running Blade Runner too." And one of my other friends was in it, and he goes, that guy knew everything about Blade Runner, and he's talking about the ultra deluxe laser disc and this and that. He goes, he got really deep in the knowledge, and I can understand why, because David, that's like his. If it's not
his favorite movie, I think.
If it's not his favorite movie of all time, it's one of his favorite movies of all time. And when you're that committed or love something that much, then you're just gonna bring everything to the table, and I think, and more.
And if you're like me and you've watched the movie,
And you're like,
well, but you still understand what the predicament is, right? Yes. That's what makes it fun to play in an IP that you're gonna have to make decisions.
What did you think about the Blade Runner game?
I liked it. I think that I was playing with Mike and Felipe, so
Was it just the three of you?
I think it was just the three of us. And the thing is that I think all of us we all were like sympathetic in our brains,
right?
Like I guess you would call it metagaming, right? Because you've seen these and you understand what's going on. Okay. But the idea of how do you keep the clone? Is it a clone? Is that what they call it?
It was a clone. Yes.
How do you keep the clone from going crazy and hurting people versus just are you going to get him off the world? Are you going to save him? Are you just going to go? Are you just going to kill him? Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what I liked about that game. I basically used the original, adventure that came in the book, and I didn't think there was enough moral dilemma enough. There was,
and Blade Runner is all about moral dilemma,
exactly.
Right?
And I thought, for me, the end of that game, it had to be gut wrenching, no matter which way you decide to go, right? To with the clone, whether you want.
But every game you've run, they've all saved it, right? Or sent it on the bus to the moon or wherever the hell it went.
I think so.
I apologize if that bothers people, but
I how many times did I run it? 3 times?
At least
3 times. Well, I ran it with you, and then I ran it at Kubla Khan. And I ran it at DungeonCon.
And it was pretty cool because I played a clone.
Oh, that's right. And working for the
cops. And that was really cool. And then, you got to deal with like the cops the old cop and the other cop. They don't really like clones, right? Because you're going to go crazy one of these times.
Taking their jobs.
So it was pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, and I had a lot of fun running that game, and the multiple times I ran it, it was not the same conclusion every time, but it was pretty close, and I was shocked that the sympathy that I was like hoping to gain from the perspective of the person that made the clone wasn't there, and maybe I played her as being too vile, that there was no sympathy for that lady.
Well, as for us today, it's one of those things like, would you really do that? Would you make clone? It's a dilemma, right?
Of course, and I think that's what the game is supposed to do, and I think that was a perfect. For me, it was a perfect change in the game that I made, because it really, like before, people, like I've heard people who run that scenario, it really goes either way, right? Yeah. We got to follow the rules. So you're dead. And then the other ones are like, well, whatever. But I've read quite a bit of articles about it, and I really like the changes that I made, and I think it made it a better game, only because people were the game is structured in a way, and this is not all me because it's already pre-published game, but it was like it builds to that, you as more you go into the adventure, the more understanding you get, and the more you understand, the more invested in the game you are and in the characters, and I think that's what makes it so hard to make that final decision sometimes when you really could go either way, and it's only a pang of whatever moves your moral needle left or right, that is the pinnacle of that game, where that people can go either way and they choose one way or the other.
Well, and that as an IP is really, I think what's really cool about it is, and even though I find the movie boring, parts of it anyway, the IP, the like eating at the restaurant and the rain
setting.
and the setting is like so cool.
Yes.
And so that saves it for me and then knowing what the story is about is really cool too. It's just that it wasn't and to be honest, I haven't seen the remake or
I saw it,
whatever
but I kept falling asleep. But it might have been because I wasn't getting enough sleep at the time.
Really? Then I don't want to watch it.
We have it on
No,
DVD.
please.
So I think what the biggest takeaway is, don't get too nervous about it. Try to learn as much as you want or can, and then run the best game that you can using those rules. And like I said, understand that people want to play in that game, in that world, in that universe, because they're fans of that and they're just happy to play. I think if you poo-poo or don't want to get yourself mired or think that there's walls or anything like that barring you from running any game that has an IP, I think you're really selling yourself short and your players short, because there's a lot of IPs out there and a lot of players are fans of those things. Whether they've ever heard of that game or not, they've heard of Alien, they've heard of Blade Runner, they've heard of all kinds of different Conan. And when you run that game, like Felipe, when he runs Conan, he always gets a full table.
Well, yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And, he's running 8 players, so it's not like a small table. And people are like, oh, we're not going to get in. And they're like, they try to crash the game at the conventions. It's because people want to play in that game. And I think you're kind of committing a service when you run games like that. Because
I would say I totally agree. I think that I remember one of the last Star Trek games we played in, what Jonah was running, and he is really good GM especially for Star Trek, because he really likes it, right? Yes. Well, everything he runs he likes, but that was really cool. It was really cool because the table was full of people who had their own ideas about, what characters they wanted to play and what was going to happen. And then it turns out that it totally was different. It was like a Star Trek episode, right? Where what you thought would happen didn't. And it had to be done in a different way.
Correct. Yes.
So it made everybody think. So it was the Star Trek universe, right? The IP. We were.
And then we come across this big old huge ship with tons of guns.
Yeah.
And a bunch of wackos in it.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. So I think that the idea of IP games or different genre games it's not so limiting as you might think, because people are going to be open if they want to play in a game like that.
Correct.
So there you go. Hopefully that answered Saul's question.
You're convinced to run some IP games out there because
Saul wants to play in them.
People love them. Let me tell you, people love them, and I think you're doing a service to people out there when there's games they want to play, and nobody's running those games for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think if you go to conventions and run games, or your local game store or whatever, I think gaming clubs. There's the gaming clubs out there, different parts of the country. I think it's a good take the chance on running an IP game, because they are a lot of fun, and you do get that excitement from people when they're playing in the world that they really want to play in.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.